But I think, Zach, we wanted to talk about this today because there's a chance that this news might be done by the time we air on Wednesday, and it's around Corbin Burnes. And we understand here in Baltimore, a lot of people are wondering what is taking so long. Why aren't the Orioles making that deal? Go ahead and make that deal. Give them the money. Well, I have a different opinion on that. You guys who watch the show know how I feel. But let's actually hear from Jon Morosi here, Zach, where he talks about who he thinks is the favorite right now to land Corbin Burnes. Let's play that clip for you guys.
I feel like, JP, we've been talking about the same 6 major names. I had Corbin Burnes at the top of that list. Is the link to San Francisco real? Because it seems to be, and are they nearing anything?
The link is real. There is no deal close, Lauren, at this hour from what we can gather. But the Giants are viewed by many as one of the front runners and perhaps the front runner to sign Corbin Burnes. Remember, Corbin Burnes, of course, pitched in the Bay Area in college. He makes his home in Arizona now, so close to home. If he ends up signing in the National League West, that would be an ideal fit, I think, from a personal family perspective among the available options for him. We know this, Burnes and his representation likely trying to go beyond the deal that Max Fried was able to sign in New York. And so that means that it would be a deal in excess of $200 million. And the Giants, with Buster Posey now as the president of baseball operations, they are in the market for big-time free agents. They've already signed Willy Adames, and it would not surprise anybody, Lauren, in the industry if they eventually sign Corbin Burnes.
I know.
So right there, you're hearing Jon Morosi, who's a friend of the Ryan Ripken Show. If you guys want to go back and watch our sit-down with John, had him on at the winter meetings in Dallas last week. But John's saying he thinks the favorite's San Francisco. You know, no deal's done yet, but he feels like it would be. And Zach, you and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
I've been hammering the desk here. It's not that I want this to be true, but we're looking at a situation. And I think I even asked you, I knew the answer to it already. And John even mentioned it. Where'd Corbin Burnes go to college, Zach?
Yeah, out in California.
Out in California. He lives in Arizona. If the Diamondbacks offered him that mega deal, which they're not going to, he would be an Arizona Diamondback. So I think that the Orioles are trying to make a good deal for him. But when you look at what's happening with San Francisco, they just spent a lot. And it's more than just, hey, give a free agent money. Some players just want the money, Zach. There's no doubt about it. But for Corbin Burnes, there's more than that to that than just him getting the bag. Yeah. It's going to a place where he sees his future, his family's future moving forward. So I think if it's the team out west that's the only team, I think the Giants are going to land him.
Yeah, and I know Oriole fans are not going to be the happiest because I believe he also ends up in San Francisco. We've said it for a while. My biggest thing is thank your lucky stars that it's if he does go to San Francisco, that he's not pitching in Boston, he's not pitching in New York, he's not pitching in Toronto, where you'd probably be seeing him 2 to 3 times a year. We've talked about before. It's not always the money; it's what makes sense for the person, for the human. And everything points to if they make the around the best deal, I think they will give him the best offer. But if they make around the best deal, I think San Francisco is where he ends up. Also, just a side note, Buster Posey in the Willy Adames press conference looks like he could still catch 150 games behind the plate. It is the weirdest thing seeing him as the general manager or president of baseball operations doing the introductions. And I'm like, you literally could probably be catching and batting 5th for the Giants and be productive.
I wonder if that's in the deal now. Hey, Corbin,
I'll be the catcher for you. I'll be your personal catcher.
And I will call the game.
Yeah.
That's it. And Buster, by the way, obviously one of the best players that we've seen, best catchers that we've seen. He has an idea about winning. He was a part of some championship teams out there with Bruce Bochy at the helm. And they're going to want to spend, and they're going to have to spend in the National League to keep up with the Dodgers. And I'd say the Padres are in a weird position, but still a really good team.
Very
Arizona, I think, will be back in this hunt, even though they have to make some decisions. But I just want people to know that it would sting more if Corbin goes to Boston or New York, no doubt about that, or Toronto, because you're sitting there going, well, damn, he chose those teams instead of coming back to Baltimore. For that, I'd say he'd be mad. But I really do believe he's going to go out west because there's more to him than just signing that amount. And we're talking about the dollar amount. If Max Fried got 218, Zach, I think Corbin's pushing to 250.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part. And Scott Boras, you see that quote that Scott Boras had today about the Orioles, and people have heard the quote, and Rock Kabatko and a ton of other reporters put it out there, what Scott Boras's quote was. And I'll paraphrase this. Scott Boras was saying that the new Orioles ownership has made it very clear that things are different than they've been in the past, and they are very focused on retaining and extending players that they drafted and developed. So you guys want to do the math on who are those players? We're talking about Gunnar Henderson. We're talking about Jackson Holiday. And I'm not saying you got to pick, but if we're talking about looking at your future, Zach, 22-year-olds, 21-year-olds, give me those guys and wanting them to stay in Baltimore over a guy that doesn't have connections and is going to be entering his 30s, and love Corbin Burnes. It's not a Corbin Burnes thing, but I think we're on that same page. I think there's a little bit more to that of them being an Oriole for life than a guy that's coming in at a crossroads with no attachment to the city.
Yeah, because you don't have to sell anything to these guys. You don't have to bring them in, and in those 3-hour, 4-hour interviews, when you're having the negotiations, you don't have to sit down and be like, hey, this is this, and this is why you should come to Baltimore. These guys understand. They live it. They are a part of it every single day, every single game. They've seen what they've put into this team. They've been there from the start to where they are now, from when it was 100 losses and they were all getting drafted to now. They've talked about, and these guys have talked about in interviews where in the minors, they had the conversations together of going out there and winning a championship together in Baltimore, bringing Baltimore baseball back to the top. So they've had that mindset. That's something that they've wanted to do. It's easier to pitch something to a guy like that who's been there, been a part of it, than it is for, hey, a Max Fried. You're going in there and going, hey, you can be a part of this, and then you're trying to sell him on Baltimore instead of guys who have been here, and they just more looking for, okay, you want me here, you're meeting my asking price, let's get it done.
Yeah, and also, if you're new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button. It's the Ryan Ripken Show. We're live on Mondays and Thursdays, and then we have our happy hour hot stove on Wednesday nights as well. We're live when the Ravens are playing pregame. So we have different forms of entertainment. But for right now, and when baseball gets going, you're going to have a lot of baseball conversations, just football time. But we want to touch on this one. And to close this out, I see some points here. And Flynn, and I appreciate the comment. I wonder if Adley is in talks with Corbin at all. That catcher-pitcher relationship, if anyone could make the sell to him on our team, it'd be from him, from the Orioles. I don't know about the relationship. I'll just say to this, Flynn, if Corbin wasn't in Baltimore the year before, I think you're going to need people to sell Corbin Burnes on staying. But the reality is he was here. He was in Baltimore. Juan Soto was in New York. You don't have to – there's nothing that Juan has to be sold on with the Yankees. He has an idea going into free agency, what the Yankees are, who they're about. It's only for me when a guy's not with the team of, hey, why should you come here? Corbin has his answer on that debate. I don't think it has anything to do with that either. I think, completely honest, it's looking at what does the future look like for him, his family, and what he sees. If he takes a shorter contract, Zach, and I saw that other comment about from Josiah saying that Rosenthal tweeted that he might be looking for a higher AAV value, average annual value salary. I still don't see it being Baltimore. It's even more pushing to San Francisco. So we'll see on that. And I think we'll save it for a different time, Zach, if you want a closing remark. But I do think Baltimore, and I'm really interested when Sasaki goes. I'm not saying it's the Baltimore. I don't think he's coming to Baltimore. But if Sasaki goes out west, San Diego, Seattle, you are going to see one of those big dogs out there get moved. And I guarantee you, Baltimore is going to be one of those teams buzzing to bring them in.
Yeah, and we've already seen reports of the Orioles have reached out to the Mariners about Castillo and guys like that. So the Sasaki is kind of that next domino to fall. I don't think Corbin impacts much that the Orioles are going to do because, as we've talked about, him going to San Francisco, I don't think makes anyone in San Francisco, all of a sudden expendable. I still think if they're going to make a trade, it's going to be with someone like the Padres, like the Mariners, like the Pirates. I think that works out very well too. There's some rumors around that. But overall, yeah, I think Corbin Burnes ends up in San Francisco. I think that's just kind of the writing's on the wall. Makes too much sense for both sides. They want him. I think he wants to be out west. Probably not the best for his championship aspirations, just because it's going to be tough being in, we talked about the Dodgers, Padres, same division. But Red Sox, Yankees here. It's going to be interesting, but I think we're both on the same page. We think he stays in orange and black next year, but on the West Coast.
Yeah, if that's the West Coast team that's going to give him the best offer, absolutely. Now, if he goes again to New York and Boston, fans in Baltimore, you have every right to be frustrated. But I think it's an emphasis. And I'll say this, and I saw this comment from Mark. What happened to loyalty to a team? You know how you establish that? The guys that you develop and bring in here. And you mentioned Carl Edwin right there. Calvin was drafted by the team. Convinced, hey, you're from here, and he's from Maryland. We're from Maryland. Stay here, be the guy, and he was all about that. Bobby Witt Jr. is looking to do that with Kansas City at the moment. You want that for Gunnar and Jackson. So if we're going to say about loyalty, your best shot to lock down the superstar for the future is Gunnar and Jackson. And I'll tell you what, it would pain me to see Gunnar Henderson in any other jersey besides the Orioles. I'll put it that way. Corbin in a different jersey, not going to have that same feeling.
Seen him in a different jersey for most of his career. And that's my final remark is, about the loyalty stuff. Soto didn't owe anything to the Yankees. Burnes doesn't owe anything to Baltimore, especially when these guys get traded there. Burnes, as much as I think he enjoyed being in Baltimore, I think Soto enjoyed being a Yankee. It's not like they had a choice. They didn't sign there in free agency thinking, okay, this is somewhere I want to stay. They went in saying to everyone, hey, I'm going to test free agency. Everyone knew going into the season what was going to happen. So I don't think it's something where you're sitting there going, oh, he's not loyal to this team. Like, what happened to loyalty? It was a 1 year. He was here for less than 8 months. I can't be sitting there saying he's turning his back on us, because that's not true.
Yeah. Well, and again, you were a contractor for a year.
Exactly.
You're brought in to do a job for a year, and we're hoping to see how it would turn out. The Yankees did that with Soto, saw the result there. The reality is, this is a business, and you got to take care of yourself first and your family and whatever you want to do. And for these players, Zach, it takes so long to get to this process. I never blame anyone for going about when they've waited their time, they want to go somewhere else and they do the right thing. I'm all about it.